I want to help do things that South Carolina has never done before, and so I just think that we can do that this year, and I want to be a part of that.
It's funny that also I was reading Gamecock Central. They were talking to Boogie Huntley about the things he's working on, and he said hand placement. And if you're reading that, you go, interesting, hand placement. And that's one of those little things, like if you're not on the team, if you don't play defensive line, you didn't play football, you're like, what's a big deal? But it's a huge deal. Little things like that are a huge deal. Hand placement, your stance, being balanced, all these other little things. Maybe you want to make sure that you're consistent every time you line up so you're not tipping anything off. Sometimes the way you place your hands or the way you get into your stance can be a problem if you're not firing off the ball correctly or you're not getting to a gap correctly. Little things that we don't talk about when we're yapping about sports, like hand placement, can be a big deal.
And that's one of those things, and I were talking about this earlier, I feel like the interior of your defensive line is one of the areas that we haven't talked about as much because you have so many guys returning. You have Boogie, you have Tonka, you have TJ Sanders, you have, Nick Barrett, all these guys coming back with so much experience. And, that area was a little bit hit or miss last year. You look at their statistics, they're about middle of the road in the SEC in a lot of areas, including, stopping the run. And they had their moments, certainly. But when you're looking at making improvements, especially for guys that have been around this program for so many years, you have to really go to those very small, finite details to really try and make a difference. And maybe it is hand placement. Maybe it is the way you're coming off the ball on the snap that needs to change just a little bit to make things a little bit better across the board as a whole. And those are the kind of things that, again, for guys that have been there and done that for so many years here at South Carolina are going to be working on through the spring and the summer to try and be better when the fall rolls around.
There's a lot of little things like, slanting, leverage, getting lower than your opponent, different things that we don't really talk about.
And again, for us that have never played defensive line, because look at us, why would we ever play defensive line?
Oh, come on.
That sounds...
By the way, you and I together our weight?
I'll say...
Not Boogie Huntley.
I think Preston could crush us both. Put together
today.
Yeah, exactly. So, and Preston would be the perfect person to speak on this kind of thing. But those small little finite details, the little minimal things can go a long way when you're talking about improving your overall technique when it comes to playing this fall.
And when we talk about technique, these are those things that we discuss, these little minute things that make a big difference and can help a player. Like if a player's struggling with something, it could be something as simple as, okay, we got to work on your technique.
Right.
Maybe you're not using your hands a certain way. Whatever it is. But I thought it was interesting, Boogie Huntley talking about hand placement. Last thing from Boogie Huntley, things the defense is trying to improve upon. Cut 9, Tyler.
Well, like you said, we're still early in spring ball. We don't have a game for a while, so we really get to focus on ourselves. And so just one of the things, especially in spring ball, I'm sure a lot of places, but just effort, intensity, energy, stuff like that. There's things that don't really need a certain scheme because we're not necessarily game planning for anybody right now. We're not doing anything of that sort. We're just being able to really work on ourselves, dial in on the little things. I know for me personally, hand placement, stuff like that. So each person has their own individual things they need to work on. And then as a team, just seeing out there what everybody can do, watch guys make plays and just have fun.
And that the November also helped the psyche of all these guys on defense, right?
It definitely did, because, again, you made a vast improvement after that disastrous month of October, and all that had to do with changing up the scheme, which when you're talking about going from a 4-2-5 to a 3-3-5, that directly affects your interior offensive lineman because you're down a guy on your defensive front going from 4 to 3, obviously. So it changed up the style a little bit, and you'll kind of see where these guys factor in, and that's something that, again, is going to be a big part of this defense going into this year where you're going to be switching between those two different fronts, depending on your situation and your matchup. So there's a lot to learn. There's a lot to look back on from this past year and, see how it applies going up into 2024.
Yeah, and look, the last two seasons on each side of the ball, drastic adjustments were made.
Mm-hmm.
Now, 2 years ago, it helped get South Carolina to the Gator Bowl, 8-win season, big wins over two ranked teams that were trying to get in the college football playoff, Tennessee and Clemson.
Yep.
Last year, it led to only one loss in November, and that was the Clemson game where you didn't give up an offensive touchdown. But it didn't turn everything so much that you got to a bowl game, but you got really close.
Sure.
And we saw these improvements on the drastic changes. So the good thing to think about is, as frustrating as last year could have been for coaches, players, fans, everything like that, you did see a defense all of a sudden start making an impact when they weren't getting turnovers. So they did get turnovers in November, but they also, and you and I talked about this yesterday, what are you doing when you're not forcing turnovers?
Exactly.
Because, again, turnovers are a thing. As much as you want to control it, you really can't control it a lot.
Yeah.
What are you doing defensively to be efficient, effective, and get yourself off the field and make plays if you're not forcing turnovers?
And that month of November, Clayton White wouldn't still have a job here if they continued what they were doing in the month of October.
Oh, I agree.
The numbers and improvements, and I brought this up plenty of times before, they statistically had the second best defense in the SEC in the final month of the season. Yes, they did play at Jacksonville State and Vanderbilt in that time, but still, games are games. And they also played Clemson in the season, obviously. So they made improvements. They showed they were turning in the right direction, changed up the scheme a little bit. So that is the reason for optimism going into this year, in addition to bringing in and having a bunch of guys returning that bring a lot of experience to this defensive room, which, again, always starts up front with the guys on the interior of the defense, which is going to be your most senior-laden group, really, on this entire team.
It feels like the front two levels of the defense got a lot more older, more experienced, and it feels like you've upgraded yourself.
Yes.
In the first two levels of the defense.
Yes.
And you have yourself some depth.
Yes.
All right, now, tomorrow again, the women on our sister station, 98.5 WOMG, 4:30 pregame, 5 o'clock tip. We got baseball tonight. This is Thursday, right?
Yes, it is.
We have baseball tonight here on the game in Columbia and in Myrtle Beach. 7:45 pregame, 8 o'clock first pitch from Tuscaloosa.
It'll be a late one.
Yes, we will talk about that. There's a cute little key stat that I want to get to as we yip a bit about this series starting tonight on the road. We'll get to that next. Terry Ford, Tyler Head. It's a halftime show. We're just going to hang out here till about 3 on a game. Halftime show, Terry Ford, Tyler Head here on the game. Speaking of on the game, here in Columbia and in Myrtle Beach, tonight, 6:45 pregame, 7:45 pregame, 8 o'clock first pitch. South Carolina, Alabama. Right now, Gamecocks sitting in second in the SEC East at 4-2, behind Kentucky of all people.
Yes.
At 5-1. Alabama 2-4 in the SEC East, 19-6 overall. Tide have been ranked a good portion of the year. It's very interesting. You have Arkansas 5-1 out west. You have Kentucky at 5-1, South Carolina, Florida at 4-2. Then you have 6 teams in the SEC at 3-3.
I mean, it's a competitive league year in and year out, and it looks like it's shaping up to be that once again. And, you know, Alabama, I know they got swept on the road this past weekend at Georgia. One, as we know, going into any road environment in the SEC is not going to be easy. Georgia might have one of the, if not the best offenses in all the SEC, led by Charlie Condon this season.
Charlie Condon's ridiculous.
He's unbelievable. And, hey, Alabama's got a pretty good third baseman themselves. We'll get to him in just a moment. But you know, I don't read too much into that loss against Georgia, because Georgia's going to beat a lot of teams this year, and Alabama going to be looking to get themselves back on track this weekend with the series against South Carolina.
And one thing with Alabama, I mean, the Tide obviously, you know, they score runs. Second in the league in batting average. Runs scored, they are in the top 3 as well. I think they're second or third in runs scored.
Mm-hmm.
They don't hit a lot of home runs, but slugging percentage is, I'm going to look at it right now in front of me, 563. On base percentage is above average at 430. So offensively, Alabama scores runs. I mean, everybody, the offensive numbers in the SEC are ridiculous.
Yes.
Pitching-wise, this is where Alabama has trouble. The Tide in the bottom half of the SEC in ERA at 4.61, while South Carolina is fourth in the SEC in ERA, one of only 5 programs with an ERA of under 4. The interesting part about these stats, to break them down a little bit farther, Alabama's pitching staff, one of the issues they have had is issuing walks. They issue walks. They're among the worst pitching staffs in the SEC when it comes to handing out free passes. You know who leads the league in drawing walks?
That'd be South Carolina.
Yep. So that's an interesting little tidbit of game inside the game type of thing is Alabama walks hitters, South Carolina draws walks. So the more base runners you get, if you can knock them in, Tyler,
yes,
that could really bode well for you this weekend.
And that was a big struggle for South Carolina through the early couple of weeks in non-conference plays, leaving so many guys on base despite getting those free passes. Now, they've done a whole lot better job in these past 6 games in a row that they've won. But again, going up against a team like Alabama tonight that can score a lot of runs themselves is going to test your own pitching staff. You can't leave guys on base, especially with those free passes.
Right. If they're going to hand you free passes, and Alabama's fourth in the SEC in giving up walks, you have to take advantage of those.
Yes.
The flip side of something again, Alabama doesn't hit a lot of home runs, but the Gamecocks pitching staff second in the SEC in home runs allowed.
They don't hit a lot of home runs, but they make really good contact with the ball. And I like looking at the batting ball percentages for every team. And I talked the other day about South Carolina drastically improving on their line drive percentage, which is those balls that get hit into the gap, the ones that typically end up turning into your RBIs. Every single player on Alabama that has the statistics available is 16% or above on their line drive percentage this season.
Yeah, I mean, they've only hit 47 homers, but they're hitting 324 as a team. They're slugging 563. So they might not be hitting a lot of home runs, but they're making good, solid barreling contact. There's no doubt. And you brought it up, too. Their third baseman's not bad.
Do you know where he was last season?
You told me this earlier. I did not know this till you told me this earlier. Go ahead.
Bishop State Community College in Mobile. And I talked to a guy, Will Miller, who covers the team for Bama Central a little bit earlier on today. And I asked the question, like, what were the expectations out of this guy before you got him in here? And he even said he didn't even think the coaches thought that they were going to get as much production out of this guy when he was able to come in here. And that's what you see. And baseball is such a funny sport because the disparity in talent between the very best and the like middle to lower tier isn't all that big of a gap. So you can have a guy that's just killing it down in one of those lower leagues. You say, all right, well, he's coming to the SEC. I don't know how he's going to do. And he's just a good baseball player. And maybe he was an inch too short or maybe a step too slow when he was coming out of high school to get the offers from these, bigger institutions. But you go out there and you play it like that in any college level, you're going to get noticed. And he gets his opportunity to come into Alabama, and he's been lights out this season so far.
I mean, Gage Miller is second in the SEC in batting average. By the way, Charlie Condon is the offensive player of the year right now in the SEC. It's ridiculous what Condon's doing at Georgia. Gage Miller is behind Condon in batting average at .429. Think about this for a minute. You've played over 20 games.
Right.
The leading hitter in the conference, Charlie Condon, is hitting .517. Let me say that one more time. He's hitting .517. No, this is not Pony League ball. This isn't Little League. This isn't T-ball. Charlie Condon in the SEC is hitting .517 to lead the league after 20-some games.
And that's a guy you're going to have to deal with here in a couple weeks when you take on Georgia. But you have a guy very comparable in Gage Miller.
He's hitting
coming up this weekend.
.429. And Miller, second in batting average, third in slugging percentage. He is seventh. This is how much offense is going on in the SEC. Gage Miller's on-base percentage is .500. That's seventh in the SEC. Seventh in the conference.
Yeah.
Miller also leading the league in runs scored, second in hits, and fifth in runs batted in. And the numbers just go on and on and on. I mean, Gage Miller's had a phenomenal season.
And while the team as a whole has not been hitting a lot of home runs, he and T.J. McCants, their center fielder, both tied with 11 home runs this season. So those two guys do have the ability to take it out of the park.
Yeah, and McCants is a guy that we didn't talk about yet, but McCants is also has got some game.
Yes.
So you're looking at an Alabama team offensively, one of the best outfits in the SEC. Their pitching is below average. The other thing too is they are, I believe, in a lot of fielding metrics, the worst fielding team in the SEC.
Yes.
Now South Carolina is near the bottom as well in fielding percentage. Alabama, I believe, is last in fielding percentage. So,
yeah.
I mean, that's not the end-all, be-all defensively because there's a lot of other defensive metrics to look at as well. But Alabama, defensively, they've had some struggles.
And we've seen the errors rear their ugly heads with South Carolina at times this season. Now, you could potentially run into a situation this weekend where that could be the deciding factor in the game, especially with two offenses that score at the clip the way both these teams do. So, got to be on your P's and Q's and make sure none of those errors end up costing you this weekend.
So, again, that starts tonight, 7:45 pregame. I always want to say 8 o'clock tip. 8 o'clock first pitch.
We got to get out of the mindset of basketball. We're almost done with it.
I know. In Tuscaloosa, look, is it going to be easy? Of course not. Alabama's a good baseball team. Obviously, you don't want to get swept. But if you can find a way to eke out 2 out of 3 on the road at Bama, which would be a very tall chore, to go with the sweep you just got at home against Vandy, and right now you're sitting at 4-2 in league after, losing 2 out of 3 at Ole Miss.
Yep.
You would be sitting in a nice spot early in the SEC season. So we'll see what happens starting tonight. Again, it's a Thursday, Friday, Saturday series this week, not your normal Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So that's tonight, 7:45 pregame, 8 o'clock first pitch here on the game in Columbia and in Myrtle Beach. We have so much stuff going on around here. I lose track of all the stuff we have going on around here. But tomorrow, this show, Tyler and I will be out at Quaker Steak and Lube. Bluff Road, I-77, right where you get on the interstate. When you go up Bluff like you're leaving Williams-Brice,
yep,
and you're heading up to I-77, it's on the left-hand side. And I will say this. The original Quaker Steak and Lube is in Western PA.
I've heard about it.
I've eaten at the original Quaker Steak.
Don't they have like the dynamite fire wings or something like that?
You can eat wings there and you'll lose your sense of taste for a week.
I think Man vs. Food did a show there one time.
Yeah, I mean, Quaker Steak and Lube. I used to go there and eat and then bounce on the check, crawl out the bathroom window. What can I say? I'm a radio guy. But food's really good. The wings are phenomenal. Tons of different types of wings. So we'll be there. There's also bowling in that complex. All sorts of cool stuff going on. Quaker Steak and Lube, and we'll be there hanging out noon to 3 tomorrow.
How good of a bowler are you?
Today?
Yeah.
I haven't I bowled in leagues when I was a kid for like 2 or 3 years.
Sure.
But after I left league bowling, I only did drunk bowling.
Well, that's the funnest kind.
It's the funnest kind. So if I go out and bowl, like try to bowl now, it's not there, man.
Might have to go head to head with each other and see what happens.
You might get a W. I'll be lucky to break 150 these days. I'll tell you. All right, so we'll be doing that tomorrow again, noon to 3. It's for Sound and Images and our buddy Adam Vance. So we'll be out there noon to 3. Come back in here. Our text of the hour, 803-404-6100. Get your thoughts. Also, we'll spin back, maybe get some Brian Snicker, get Snit, his thoughts on opening day for the Braves as well. Halftime show, Terry Ford, Tyler Head, rolling till 3 on the game. All right, time to get to the old text line at 803-404-6100. What do you got there, Tyler Head?
Yeah, so going back to our earlier conversation about opening day not quite having the same special feeling, Our guy Phil brings up a really good point. He says, guys, baseball is still very special. I think we're just missing Tommy Moody reminding us how special it is. And that is, you're not wrong.
Phil, I think you just put in another large reason why.
Yeah.
Because Tommy made sure you felt special about baseball. It is. Whether it's the Gamecocks or Major League Baseball, Tommy loved it. I mean, he played. He
Sure.
he loved the game. And he would always, like today, Tommy'd be buzzing all over the place for opening day in Major League Baseball.
I learned more obscure facts about Braves and Red Sox and who knows how many other different players from just being around Tommy.
Oh, yeah. And the thing with Tommy was, Tommy would bring you stuff up from an era that, because we all grew up on Sports Center,
Sure,
right?
sure.
We grew up on cable. We grew up in a highlight culture. But a lot of the players that played before that had been lost.
Yeah.
Except like the greats of the greats of the greats.
Babe Ruth, Jackie Robinson,
Yeah.
we know those guys.
Right. The Joe DiMaggios and the Ted Williams, we all get that. But that second level of maybe not level 1 great,
The beat players.
but level 2 great
yeah.
that we've totally forgotten about. Tommy, it's right in Tommy's head. Tommy would remind you of some of those guys with some of these obscure facts. You'd say, hey, Terry, do you remember this guy? And I'm like, my God, Tommy, I do, but I haven't talked about him in forever. He goes, let me tell you what he did back in 1974.
Right.
And it's just, so Tommy, I think Phil hit it on the head. Part of what we're missing here personally for us is the Tommy Moody effect for baseball.
Mm-hmm.
I totally agree. Phil, excellent. Thank you very much, 803-404-6100 on the text line. Speaking of opening day, the Braves, there's no, I'm not going to say pressure on the Braves. There's not. Brian Stitker isn't on some hot seat to get to the World Series. All that stuff, no. Push all that aside. But the Braves, as an organization, you won the World Series 3 years ago. The last 2 years, you were looked at as a favorite to get to the World Series, and basically you soiled yourself in the National League playoffs where you didn't even get close to the World Series.
Right.
You lost series that you should have won.
Essentially, yes.
But that just shows look, I used to predict, here are my winners in divisions, and here's my winners in the American National League, and here's how things going to win the World Series. I forget how many years ago, I finally said, why are you doing that? Baseball, out of all the postseasons, and hockey's not far behind, to be fair. It is so hard to predict the postseason in baseball. It's because it's totally different than the game of baseball.
Sure.
It is, you're taking 162 games, no other sport plays that many regular season games, not close.
Mm-hmm.
And you're now taking, you built a team for a marathon, right?
Yes.
And now you're running the 100. Very simple.
It's a good way
in
to
the
put it.
postseason. And baseball is such a game, and because you follow it, it's such a game of peaks and valleys. But you just want the teams that are good have a lot more peaks and valleys. But
Yeah.
good teams have valleys.
Well-
Good teams have bad weeks. Good teams go through 5-game losing streaks. So get to October. It's a week, right?
Yeah.
A series.
Yes.
So what if your team has won 103 games and you have your bad week in the first week of October?
Well, guess what? You're not playing anymore.
You go home.
Yeah.
That's why I changed my mindset so much about thinking about the postseason of baseball. It's probably 10 years ago. Just thinking, what you're looking at also is the dumb luck of the calendar to play your way that you are not in a valley in that week where the guys that made the plays and guys that made the pitches stop doing it for that week like they do during a regular season.
And now, with the way that the postseason is structured, the Braves being one of the top seeds in the NL had 5 days off?
Yeah.
You never have 5 days off at the course of the entire year. And what did we see? All those teams that had days off, guess what? They didn't last very long.
Right. I mean, I know the Braves got knocked out. The Orioles got knocked out. All the teams, I think, that
Yeah,
that
I think they all got bounced.
I think they all got bounced, or all of them except one or something.
Yeah.
But it's just, again, it's so different. And you're asking guys who are built, baseball players are built on what they do every day.
Mm-hmm.
There is a way. They have a vibe that they do every day. And they play a certain way. They're playing 6 games a week typically. You got one off day. Sometimes you don't. Every now and then it gets kooky and you have 2. But You are a creature of habit like nobody's business because no other sport goes through this grind. And now you're uplifting, you're flipping the whole habit upside down.
Sure.
And all you're hoping for again is that bad week you had in June, you don't have it in October.
Yeah. Well, momentum at the end of the regular season matters too.
I just really believe that, when you sit as a baseball team, there's only so much you can do. You can tie every knot you think going into October, and it can get untied on you if you just have that bad week.
That's right.
The guys you relied on, all of a sudden, not reliable for a week. And all of a sudden you're going home like the Braves did last year, like the Braves have done the last 2 years. Remember when they won the World Series, nobody was picking them. We forget that.
That's how it usually goes.
That's the way baseball is in October. So I stopped the prediction, but probably I'd be wrong anyway, so it wouldn't matter. All right, we'll come back in here. Football in the 1 o'clock hour. Lots of Gamecock conversation. We're going to hear from Kyle Kennard, the new Gamecock, coming up next. Halftime show, Terry Ford, Tyler Head, as we kick off hour 2, which is football, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors. All right, we're rolling through spring practice. Defensive players talked yesterday for South Carolina. We heard from Boogie Huntley in the first hour. Kyle Kennard coming in from Georgia Tech, a legit edge pass rusher, a guy who I think 8.5 sacks last year, tackles for loss. Kyle Kennard is a guy that's going to, the hope is, consistently put heat on quarterbacks. So here's Kennard talking yesterday, discussing the young guys. Now, let's go with the transition first, Tyler, from Georgia Tech to South Carolina, cut 3.
Which is a testament to these guys that's already been here. It's been nothing like stepping on toes. It's been a seamless integration of players and scheme and our different skill sets. It's been no type of animosity. It's just been like you come in and I make them better and they make me better and we're going to mesh together. So come August when it's time to play ODU and every other team, we're on the same page.
Yeah, I mean, look, the world of college football today, in this transfer portal society we live in, and I'm sure there's a player, maybe there are some players who are like, whoa, what's this? Whoa, we bring this guy in for? He plays my position.
Right.
But for the most part, everybody gets it. Guys are coming in looking for opportunities. There's a reason the coaching staff extended, to be interested in them to transfer to the school. A lot of it is, this is the way it is. Now I got to go out and I got to get better so this cat doesn't take my spot. Because he's been brought in here to take my spot or to take away snaps from me, right?
Right. Well, and I think everybody that is in the edge room from a season ago understands that, hey, the level of production you had a season ago was not where you needed it to be. So that's why they went out and brought in guys like Kyle Kennard, brought Gilbert Edmond back from Florida State. You obviously have Dylan Stewart coming in as a true freshman. All these guys are aware that, hey, this room needs to be better this year. And, you obviously hope that the guys that are in the room from a season ago can step up. We talk about Desmond Umeozulu, who, last season got his time on the field, got his opportunities, but didn't do a whole lot necessarily. And again, he's only going into his sophomore year, so there's still time to continue to improve, to continue to develop. But you bring in a guy like Kyle Kennard, who's been there and done that and proven it at a Power 5 level, hopefully can spark something in this room.
Yeah, and, that's the other part. You hit it perfect. We've had this conversation since it was really through last season and in the offseason. Just didn't get consistent production from the edge position. You just didn't. Every now and then, Jordan Strong would pop and do something, but he wasn't consistent. I mean,
he was also in his 7th year of college football.
And he's had multiple knee injuries, and he just, you're just hoping you could get something from him, and he gave you the best he had. But
Sure.
Like you said, he just turned 35. He's had knee issues. So this year, you bring in Kyle Kennard, who's a legit edge guy. You bring in Dylan Stewart, 5-star recruit coming off the edge. Bring back Gilbert Edmond,
who everybody's been fawning over him so far in the 2 weeks they've been practicing. So take that with a grain of salt. But as of right now, he's living up to what's been said about him.
There's been a lot of Dylan Stewart versus 5-star offensive lineman Josiah Thompson in practice, which is good for both of them.
Iron sharpens iron.
Absolutely. So now you've added depth to your edge position to where, you're not hoping that a guy in his 7th year of college coming off multiple knee injuries is going to be your go-to guy. Now you have other, and you brought up Des U. He's been pushed aside because, hey, man, you didn't pop as a freshman. Well, okay, we're done with you. We're moving on. Des U is a guy with the long arms and that burst off the edge and all those things you love about pass rushers who just wasn't ready to contribute in his freshman year. That's all.
If that doesn't speak to the impatience that we have as fans of college football now,
crazy.
I don't know what is. A guy that comes in as a 4-star, as a true freshman, well, what do you mean you weren't an All-American? What the heck's wrong with you?
What's up with you?
No, you still have time to develop. And this spring is going to be vitally important for him as well, now that he does have a season under his belt, now that he does understand what it's like to play in the SEC. Like, okay, here's what I need to do to get better. How can I make these improvements to get myself ready when the fall rolls around?
And another guy we don't talk about, but every now and then he flashes, and when he does, you go, why didn't he flash more, is Brian Thomas. Yes, you'll see him every now and then go out there and create a little havoc, and you go, why didn't he create more havoc?
Yep.
So it's just been a lack of consistency, and hopefully bringing in a Kennard, Stewart coming in, Gilbert Edmond coming back, a year of development for a Des U, or Brian Thomas or whoever. Maybe now, because you have a depth of opportunity and a depth of choices, hopefully you'll get some production consistently from the edge position.
And that's one thing we talked about so much with this team a season ago was how many guys that you had to play as freshmen, and namely on defense. I'm looking at this lineup right now. As far as scholarship guys go, you shouldn't have that problem this year. You should be a little more of a senior-laden, more experienced defense just overall compared to where you were a season ago.
Yeah, I mean, it just feels like they've gotten better on those first two levels. There's more depth there. There's guys who have track records, who are veterans. The athleticism, I think, has gone up a tick at linebacker. I feel like this defense has more options to succeed. I love the fact that, Clayton became open to being more multiple on defense when he went to that 3-3-5. Obviously, the 4-2-5 is still going to get used. So I like defensively on the first two levels where they're at. Now, the defensive backfield really comes down to improvement at safety and nickel and pass coverage, and B, who's going to take the other corner spot.
Right.
And that we're going to get into. We're going to hear some defensive back talk here in just a little bit as well. Let's go back to Kyle Kennard real quick, Tyler. Let's get cut 5. Kennard talking about his development working with Coach Lucas.
I said this before. I feel like everything that he told me that was going to happen when I was here, as far as the way he coaches me and the knowledge he gives me and how consistent he is with the things he tells me every day. I feel like it's been the same one since I stepped on campus. He's been a big part of the reason I've developed just in a short time of being when I first got here to being here now. So, like, big kudos to Coach Lucas, which is another big reason why I'm here now.
Boy, it beats the heck out of old Prince U.
Yeah, that's a little bit more of a redeeming statement, I guess. And, he didn't take any shots at, don't know who the defensive line coach is at Georgia Tech, but he didn't take any shots at him.
No. You don't know who he is?
I don't. And you know what? If Kyle Kennard and I are put in a situation where we're in the same room together, if he comes in for Garnett Trust interview or something like that, we're going to have the conversation about him being a former Georgia Tech guy.
I'm sitting here stunned that you as a professional do not know who the defensive line coach is at Georgia Tech. I mean, I'm just sitting here, Tyler, you don't know who the defensive line coaches are for every team.
Well, please enlighten me, Terry.
I'm trying to Google it while I'm talking to make me sound smart.
But regardless, again, this is a guy
Honestly, Jeff Simpson.
Okay, there you go.
There you go.
But again, this is a guy that was able to perform well at a Power 5 institution, 8.5 sacks a season ago at Georgia Tech. He's been around the game for a while, again, coming in with a lot of experience already, looking to close out his college career here at South Carolina. And again, just kind of looking to hopefully be that spark that, ignites the edge room as a whole. And again, he is a guy, despite playing so much football, is still developing, is still learning, is still getting better. And hopefully by the time the fall rolls around, we're looking at what Sterling Lucas has done with him and saying, wow, this guy's incredible.
And again, we just never talk about development because it's boring.
Sure. Well, because we don't see it.
Right.
We're not
exactly.
the ones. I mean, we get to look at practice sometimes, but we're not the ones examining the nuance of hand position and the way these guys are coming off the ball. We're just like, all right, show it to me in a game.
Yeah, when we talked about that with Boogie Huntley last hour with, Boogie Huntley came back, what's one thing you're working on? Hand position, hand placement. What? Huh? You put him on the ground,
That's
man.
not on the stat sheet.
Put it in the dirt. Right, I don't have a fantasy. I can't. That doesn't give me fantasy points. What's your deal, man? And then with Kennard, it could something about, teaching you when you come out of your stance with burst to get lower to beat that tackle around the edge.
Right.
It could be so many okay, you got a nice A move with your hands when you're hand fighting the offensive tackle. We need a plan B. Is it going to be a spin move? What are you going to do if you're going to the outside shoulder? What are you going to do on the inside shoulder? All these little things to make you better that, quite honestly, we go because it's like, just go out there and sack somebody, will you?
Yeah.
Please.
And again, that is the kind of things that you're developing and working on in a spring setting, as Boogie alluded to earlier. Like, we're not game planning for anyone. We don't have another game for another 160, 150 some odd days. So this is the time. Mm-hmm. And yeah, you're going to have scrimmages with, inter squad scrimmages and stuff like that. But this is the time to focus on those small little details and improve on those things. When the season does roll around, that's not an issue anymore.
And now here's Kyle Kennard. Let's check out cut 4, Tyler, with Kennard talking about the young guys on the D.
Man, it's been going great as far as bringing them guys up and stepping in, and me and another older guy that I'm sure I know who it is. He coming in, we're talking to him, and as far as the young guys, they're getting better every day. Just like Debo said with his young guys in this room, same with me. Dylan Stewart, he's an athletic freak. I haven't seen anything like it from a freshman, a guy that young. And then just the guys who are stepping into older roles. BT, Brian Thomas, and a couple other guys. That's been seamless, flawless in our room. So,
yeah, I mean that's all we've heard about Dylan Stewart. Physical freak for a freshman.
Yes.
And we'll see what he can do during the season. But when you have a Kyle Kennard, you're not looking at an 18, 19-year-old and going, hey, Bub, we need you to go be a game wrecker.
That's the thing, is you're not placing the entire hope of the room on a five-star true freshman's shoulders. But
right.
You shouldn't have to do that for any position, but there are certainly some based on injuries and needs and stuff like that where these guys come into college and it's like, hey, man, I know you just got here, but we're really counting on you to be the guy at this certain position, and we would love to see Dylan Stewart be that? Absolutely. And if he emerges as the best athlete in the edge room and ends up getting the bulk of the snaps, well, he'll have earned it at that point in time. But you have guys ahead of him that have played a lot of college football, that have a lot of experience, that theoretically will probably be the ones starting out the season. And if he pops and is sacking everybody left and right, guess what? He's going to get a majority of the snaps, but he's going to have to earn it along the way.
Right. It's not handed to him with the hope that he's going to be something fantastic as a true freshman at 18 years old.
Right.
All right, switching over to Debo Williams coming back. I think Preston and Bill were talking about Debo, was it yesterday? And Preston had the best line. When the ball is snapped, Debo's going to hit something.
Yeah,
we don't know if it's going to be their guys, our guys, but Debo's going to hit someone.
He is a missile. There can be some friendly fire in there sometimes, but he's going to hit something for sure.
And God love him. Sometimes Debo will shoot the right gap and make a big play, and sometimes Debo will shoot the wrong gap, and guess what? It's not going to end well.
You can never accuse Debo Williams of not giving 110% every single play.
And he's gotten better. I mean, his tackle numbers. Look, tackle numbers don't tell you everything. It's really where you tackle people in impactful tackles. But Debo Williams' tackle numbers were among the highest in the SEC last year.
And I remember when we had him in for the Garnet Trust Hour, he's a guy that comes from Delaware. You don't exactly look at Delaware as being a talent-rich area. He comes in here with a chip on his shoulder, and he plays like that. Like he's out there trying to prove something. And again, one of the better tacklers in the SEC that hopefully can improve even more this season and become, maybe first-team All-SEC type guy that would certainly help lead this defense. And he's going to be looked to once again as one of the leaders, not only in the linebacker room, which does have a lot of new faces, as well as on this defense as a whole.
Yeah, what you'd like to see, not just from Debo, but all the linebackers, are more impactful tackles, more havoc plays, more tackles for loss, more tackles, within 0 to 2 yards of the line of scrimmage. Tackles that really put the offense in stressful situations. That's the next step for all of them. Right. Let's hear from Debo. Let's go with cut one, the first cut, Tyler. Debo talking about the new guys at linebacker.
Nah, definitely. Boys looking good. Everybody's fast, man. Fast, shifty, everything. And they processing and learning to play is very fast as well, too. I've been impressed first couple of days seeing everybody being able to just know exactly what they're doing. Like, we'll put an install in, and they already knowing what's going on. So I'm impressed.
Whether it's the new guys coming through the transfer portal, the freshmen, hopefully a guy like Mo Kaba, who eventually will be back, probably, I'm guessing, in the summer, coming back from another knee injury. Yeah, I mean, you got guys, the athleticism in the room has gone up a level. I think that's fair to say.
Sure. I'm especially excited to see a guy like Demetrius Knight coming in from UNC Charlotte, and he's a guy that, when you look at his numbers, look at his video from last year, he definitely kind of strikes you as that sideline-to-sideline type of speedy linebacker that you need to have to be successful in the SEC. So a different look of a room, but again, Debo Williams being one of the constant mainstays in there that is going to be obviously linebacker number one, and we'll see how it shakes out after that.
Yeah, Knight and Bengali have the transfer portal, bring production. To the table,
and
which
good
is
freshman as well.
Yeah, exactly. All right, we'll get back. Continue football. Go to the NFL real quick. I saw an interesting story. Most NFL owners hate these NFLPA grades on ownership. One owner who didn't turn out well is happy about the grades. We'll get into that next. Football here on the halftime show up until 2 o'clock on the game. Again, busy time here at the game in Columbia. Tomorrow, Tyler and I will be hanging out. Sound and Images live show, Quaker Steak and Lube, Bluff and I-77, the intersection right there as you're heading off on the interstate. A restaurant, travel center, bowling alley. It's just a cool place, that whole area there. And we'll be hanging out noon to 3 with our buddy Adam Vance from Sound and Images. Also, Saturday, we're all over the place Saturday. From 11 to 1:45, Elijah and myself will be at JT's Kia in Killian, off of Killian Road, giving away a car, a Kia. So we won't be, they will.
That's right. No, you're giving away your personal car.
Yeah, trust me. Someone would go, no, I'll give that back.
Well, and then when they get the car, they gave you a ride home. That's part of the deal.
Because I would no longer have a car.
That's right.
So that's Saturday, 11 to 1:45. Also, we'll have tickets for South Carolina, Texas A&M, the series the following weekend. And somebody named Tyler Head will be hanging out at the Carolina Cup in Camden. Look, we did it last year, and I'll be out there. I'll catch up with you in the afternoon.
Yeah.
It's cool. It is something that you'll be happy you got to experience. It's interesting.
I am taking any and all advice as a first-time attendee of the Carolina Cup. What should I expect, and what should I be ready for? So let me know. Firehouse Up text line 803-404-6100. I know it's going to be a good time and probably a pretty rowdy time.
Yeah, it's fun. And people everywhere. Everybody's having a blast. It was cool to be out there.
It's going to be pretty warm on Saturday, so adhere to certain drink colors.
Yes,
and proceed accordingly.
Last year it rained, and then the sun came out, but it rained for a while. This year weather was perfect.
When you drink more, it's warm and sunny everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, it's warm and sunny. Give me another beer.
That's right.
No one says it's raining and I'm freezing my tail off. Hand me a brew.
Well, when it's hot, you got to hydrate more, which means more beer, right?
Absolutely.
Because beer is like what, 30% water. So
see, it's just water.
It's the same thing.
That's what you're just being healthy. So that'll be Saturday, Carolina Cup, and also we'll be out at JT's Kia off of Killian. All right. Football, the 1 o'clock hour, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors. All right, this story is interesting. Now, the NFLPA, players basically fill out this document, this email, whatever, that grades their team,
right,
their organization, their ownership. And the Bengals, to the shock of no one, didn't do well. Despite the fact they're not a punchline anymore, thanks to Joe Burrow and, Chase and some of the other guys on that team, they're still not doing really well. Here was the grades that came back on the Bengals. Treatment of families, F-. Food in the cafeteria, food/cafeteria, F-. Owner, C+. Owner's better than it used to be, probably. Katie Blackburn, by the way, is now the owner or the future owner of the team. The Brown family, really, Mike Brown has been a cheapskate. I mean, Langston Moore could spend he could do a 3-hour show on how cheap the Bengals are.
Were they one of the teams that made the guys pay for their meals in the facility?
Yes.
That's ridiculous.
I mean, Langston used to tell the story. They give you, they pass around jock straps. They wouldn't just give you a new one. They'd dig up an old one. Bengals were known for being very cheap.
You remember Bishop Sycamore when they had to share helmets? Imagine the Browns, all right, wide receivers and DBs, you guys share helmets. Quarterbacks and linebackers, you guys share helmets. We only have 12.
We got 4 jock straps. Okay, you get this one this week. You get this one next week. So yeah, the Bengals didn't grade out very well. And Katie Blackburn, the VP and most likely the future owner of the team, said, "quote Everyone should always be open to feedback. Hopefully, it makes everything better in the future." Now, again, what you have to do is back up that line by actually fixing the issues.
Well, that implies that you're going to do something, right?
So you have to do it now. You can blah 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 all day long, but it's in what you do, right?
Yes.
It's like my dad, Dean Ford. A little less talking, a little more doing. And that's really what you need.
Read that statement again.
It says, ready? Everyone should always be open to feedback. Hopefully it makes everything better in the future. No, what it should say is this, ready? Everyone should be open to feedback. I am going to definitely make everything better in the future.
Hopefully. You're literally the one that is in control of if it gets better in the future. Just say, I have received the feedback. We are going to do X, Y, and Z to make it better.
Easy. Because here's the example. Josh Harris, owner of the Commanders. Shocking the Commanders didn't do well in this.
Now, he is a new owner.
That's what I mean. He's got the Daniel Snyder. He gets the fire from Daniel Snyder.
He inherited the dumpster fire,
Yes.
and they handed him like a squirt gun and said, "All right, put this out." So he's still working on it.
Go get him, dude. So Josh Harris's quote, this is so good. He vows to fix the Commanders' NFLPA grade. Quote from Harris: "I didn't know you could get an F minus."
Okay, all right. You know what? There is at least I'm trying to find the right word for this. He's cognitively aware of how bad it is.
Yes.
He is not beating around the bush for that statement. I got an F minus. I didn't know I could be that bad. I am. I have more faith that he's going to do something about it.
He said this: "I vow to fix the culture."
Yes.
This isn't hopefully. No.
Hopefully.
I vow to fix the culture. And then the other one here about this survey was Art Rooney II, owner of the Steelers. He said, quote, "It doesn't get presented to us. It gets presented to the media. So as far as I'm concerned, it's a media opportunity for the Players Association as opposed to a serious effort of constructive criticism." Now, again, ready? Rooney dismissed the grade.
And what was his grade?
Would he just, ready? Got an F. Now, what surprised you with and I'm reading
again,
it from the Pro Football
Steelers
Talk
are
article.
Pristine.
Steelers looked at it and said, well, the Chiefs got bad grades too.
Yeah, Clark Hunt. Didn't Clark Hunt have the worst grade?
Yeah, and the Steelers finished 28th. Now, here's my thing. And the other part is, the high marks, Mike Tomlin.
Right.
From the players.
Right.
So here's my thing again with Rooney. Again, you can have that feeling.
Sure.
But ready? Nobody cares. Here's what I see. And yes, did the NFLPA hand it to the media for a reason? Are they manipulating the media? Oh, absolutely they are with this.
But this is still the opinion of the players.
The players. And ready? It's not just, and here's the media just didn't hand out the bad ones. They hand out all 32 grades, right?
And that's the thing. If this was results being pulled from the media members themselves, like, hey, let's get everybody that covers the Steelers beat to say what they think of the owner, that's different. But these are the guys legitimately in the facility, in the stadium every single day. Like, they're going to know better than anybody how good this owner is and how good these certain areas are. So, yes, you should take that criticism as a point of emphasis and try and improve on it.
Because you should, if you're Rooney, instead of that quote, "It's a media opportunity, duh," here's what you say. Now, you can say that to your friends, ready? You can talk about that to everybody, right?
It's a media opportunity to bring light to the fact that you're not being a good owner.
Right. So what you do is, you know what? Bellyache to your wife, bellyache to your dog, to your neighbor, to the dude at the gas station. Here's what you do, though, when you talk about this out loud. Wow, 28th out of 32 is not acceptable for an organization as hallowed as the Pittsburgh Steelers. Ready? I vow to fix this.
Yeah.
That's all I got to say.
Exactly.
Done.
And there was nothing in that quote that said we were going to look into this, look to improve this, or try and be better. It's like, well, guess what? Guess who's going to be 28th or worse again next year?
Yeah, and you know what? This gets you out there now. Now, the Steelers in the offseason have signed guys, so right now they're bringing in players. A lot of that is Mike Tomlin, to be fair.
Right.
But if you're ranked 28th out of 32, you think players don't talk?
Oh, of course.
Don't go to Pittsburgh, dude. Let me tell you about some of the stuff that goes on there with that ownership and that organization.
Right.
And like I said, you, like myself, is stunned to see the Pittsburgh Steelers, as good as they've been for decades and decades and decades as a franchise, sitting at 28 out of 32.
You know what this tells me? We need to loft even more praise at Mike Tomlin for dealing with maybe not the best ownership and still running a very darn good ship up there.
Yeah, so my thought is, I don't think it's bad ownership. What I'm guessing is they've done things a certain way forever and ever and ever, and they're not evolving.
Yeah.
That's my guess.
Yeah.
They're just not evolving in Pittsburgh. But you don't say, oh, it's a media opportunity. No, Art the second. You just say we're going to take a look at this and fix the problems.
Well, you know what? If he would have been graded out as an A+, I'm so glad the players feel that we are among the best in the NFL, which reflects our values as one of the premier organizations in this league.
There would be none of, well, we got an A+. This is just a media opportunity.
No.
All right, we'll get back in here. A former Gamecock is going to be right up the road playing in the NFL. You know by now, but we'll tease it and act like you don't. We'll talk about that next. Football. Sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors here on the Halftime Show on the Game.
So Clowney with that sack gets him to 9.5, and that's a big number for $750,000 bonus. He hits his plateau.
I think he might be happy.
Look at his.
He's happy. Look at him. Just look at his reaction.
That dance is worth $750.
I mean, no one knows why he's doing that right now in the stands. But we're telling him.
Hey, good for him, though. He's kind of rebuilt his career in many ways this year.
Jadavion Clowney, if you've seen that highlight, it's phenomenal. My man knew he needed that sack to kick a bonus.
Listen, if I knocked somebody over and suddenly got $750,000 more dollars, I'd be doing the same thing.
Dancing all over the place. We saw a couple guys this past year knew that they were like a sack away from an incentive kick. And we saw they celebrated pretty well in the field.
Chris Jones in the Chiefs last game also hit his incentive too.
He was quite happy.
He was.
I'd be too. I got no problem with any of that. There are people who get, the guy's playing for stats and he's out thinking. No. He just sacked the quarterback. That's helping your team.
Yeah.
But he also just hit a nice 6-figure incentive bonus number or 7-figure number, and he's enjoying the moment because he knew he needed one.
What's wrong with dangling a carrot in front of someone?
Nothing. And we get so involved in this, don't celebrate, act like you've been there before. I understand that to a point. Like, when a guy catches a pass for a first down, you're down by 30, and he does the first down thing,
Oh,
dude, go back to the huddle. Just go back to the huddle.
Oh, was it? It was Claypool with the Steelers a couple years ago that cost them the game at the end because he did that stupid thing and time ran out.
Yep.
Yeah. Situational awareness.
Exactly. So I get that, but enjoying a moment, there's nothing wrong with enjoying your moment.
Yeah.
And I thought it was cool watching those guys celebrate their incentives.
Especially for a guy, and Dan Orlovsky alluded to it at the end of that clip there, who a lot of people had kind of written off.
Yeah.
I mean, here's a guy that was the number one pick 10 years ago that when you look at his stats, hasn't lived up to the billing that people were expecting for him as the number one overall pick. Has had good seasons, has dealt with a lot of injuries. Last year was only the second time in his career he played every game during the regular season. Hit 9.5 sacks, which tied his career high from when he was back in Houston. So all the more reason to celebrate, in addition to the money, obviously. Like, this dude really revitalized career, which leads to this deal that he has with the Panthers now.
Right. I mean, Clowney last year with 9.5 sacks, really, people had just forgotten about Clowney.
Sure.
And you're right. He's had a solid career. He's had some good years. Advanced metrics love his ability to stop the run. But when you're the first pick overall, you are looked at as a potential Hall of Famer.
Exactly.
You just are. And Jadeveon Clowney is not looked at that way. Here's where it was for Clowney. He signed a 1-year, $2.5 million contract last year on the final day of training camp with the Ravens. The Ravens needed depth at pass rusher. They went out and took a flyer on Clowney, who was still, and there was a reason Clowney was still available on the last day of training camp.
He sat through the entire summer with not on a team, waiting for somebody to call him.
Just didn't get an offer that he liked. Maybe didn't get calls he thought he was going to get. Whatever the case, he was still out there. And Clowney came in, like you said, played 16 games for the second time in his career, and was a difference maker off the edge. If you look at a lot of the advanced stats, he was above average in pass rush win rate and things like that. He just had a really good year, which leads him now to getting that free agent deal with the Carolina Panthers. And again, it could be worth up to $24 million if he hits certain incentives. Look, I haven't seen the whole deal. On paper, it's 2 years, $20 million. It's never that. It's probably a 1-year deal that'll get him between 10 and 12 million. I'm just guessing right now.
Yeah.
Because it's stretched out 2 years for cap purposes, yada, yada, yada. But he can get $4 million more in incentives.
Yes.
And I know Clowney's been a guy that has no problem sitting and waiting for the right deal, and he's done that in the past. But 1 year at $2.5 million, you weren't waiting around for that.
No, not at all.
You weren't last year. So give Clowney a ton of credit at 31 years old for kickstarting his career again to where he can get an offer like this where he's going to make a decent amount of coin no matter how this contract's built.
And it's also a pretty cool homecoming, too. He's obviously a Rock Hill guy that's just down the road from Charlotte. Obviously, connection here with him playing at South Carolina. So an opportunity to play in a little bit more of maybe a comfortable environment compared to what he's been in years past. And, going to a team that is in desperate need of help in a lot of places, particularly when it comes to getting after the quarterback, because they were the worst team in the league last year doing that.
And you look at the career with Clowney, he's also played in Seattle, Cleveland, Tennessee, Baltimore, originally, like you said, in Houston. And remember, when he left Cleveland, it was not on good terms.
No, and that's what kind of maybe soured him in a lot of people's eyes and why he was sitting, because he had the season before in 2021, he had 9 sacks, so he had a good year the year before, but 2022 was a rough year, and obviously things didn't end well with him and the organization there. So, yeah, again, he was sitting around until the end of training camp waiting to get signed and took whatever deal that he could with the Ravens. But, again, great season last year. Now he's getting literally 10 times as much money to play for the Panthers.
And I remember the thing with the Browns that second year was he wasn't happy regarding, like, Myles Garrett. Like, basically, it was all about Myles. Look, Myles Garrett's best pass rusher in the NFL.
Yeah.
But Clowney didn't like some of the things going on off the field in Cleveland and was very vocal about it.
Yes.
And so that was part of it. And then part of it was, like you said, the hit and miss production with Jadeveon Clowney because of health over his career. If Jadeveon Clowney is healthy through his career, we probably see a lot better numbers.
Oh, absolutely.
We do. But when you're 31 years old, you haven't been healthy but one season in your career, you had some issues with the organization you left, you didn't consistently put up numbers through your career, you sit and wait and get that contract offer. Now, to Clowney's credit, he balled out. Now he's getting a better deal. Like you said, he's not far from Rock Hill. And hopefully the last chapter for Jadeveon Clowney will be all thumbs up.
Yeah, absolutely. And from the Panthers' perspective, again, they need somebody with his level of production coming in, because you just sold Brian Burns to the Giants for basically a couple of pennies and a shoestring, because out of the 27 sacks the team had, he had 8 of them. So he was doing most of the heavy lifting on your defense, and you really didn't have anybody worthwhile coming back that could really shoulder that same kind of load. But now you bring in Jadeveon Clowney, you get DJ Wanham, another former Gamecock coming in at linebacker to hopefully bring this defense along next year.
The other part is, again, to the Burns thing real fast, is 2 years ago, you were offered 2 number ones for Burns.
Yep.
And you passed. Then all of a sudden, it's ready to move Brian Burns the next year, and you get, 2 2s and a 5th? It could be a 4th, I think it is.
Yeah, based on production and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, you basically blew it. And you should have read the room with your franchise and your organization and where you were at. And you were in a reboot and a rebuild. And you take Burns and you leverage that guy for 2 number ones, not hold on to him so you can finish, 500?
Right.
I mean, come on. Think a little bit. All right, we'll get back. Firehouse subtext the hour at 803-404-6100. And also, if we have time in this segment coming up, we'll get you a little Vakari Swain. A lot of people are talking about Vakari Swain. Swain talked about his progress as a defensive back and transitioning to DB. We'll try to get you some of that, as well as get our Firehouse subtext the hour at 803-404-6100. It is a halftime show. Terry Ford and Tyler Head hanging out. We're going till 3 on the game.
Welcome back in. It's the halftime show. Tyler Head and Terry Ford along with you on this Thursday afternoon. It is indeed time for our Firehouse Subs text of the hour. And I did ask a little bit earlier on, we were talking about Carolina Cup coming up on Saturday, where I'll be out there in the morning. Tara will be out there in the afternoon. I asked for any and all advice for anybody that's been out there before. Nameless texter weighs in and says, if you do it right, expect to Uber. I think that says all that needs to be said.
I think that should be like a T-shirt. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's funny.
I get it. I get it.
Absolutely, we get it.
There's going to be a large segment of people, I understand, that are not aware there's a horse race going on.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. We've talked to Toby, who runs the Carolina Cup in Camden. He even said when he got there, you know, again, there's still that atmosphere is still out there. Trust me.
Right.
But they've also tried to bring the extreme part of it down to where now you've got kids zone and they try to, you know, keep the debauchery part very low now. Right. When he first got there, it was like crazy.
They don't do the porta potty run like at Belmont, do they?
Well, the running of the urinals was a thing at Pimlico for the Preakness.
Oh, it's Preakness.
I mean, yeah.
Okay.
So you can go to video. Just if you get bored, go to YouTube and just type in the search "running of the urinals at the Preakness," and you'll see.
I've seen it.
You've seen it, haven't you?
I've seen it. Yes.
And you see now when they were throwing full beers at them, was it beer cans or beer bottles?
Probably beer bottles, I think.
Because I'm saying the lucky ones are getting thrown full beer cans.
Yes, those hurt a little less.
They hurt a little less than the full beer bottles. Now, again, when you're that drunk, I'm going to go run on top of the porta potties. You kind of get what you get.
Sure.
But the minute someone goes for it, people just start chucking.
Yeah.
It's 1 year, I wasn't here for this one, or I didn't see it. I might have been there. But someone said a dude was running on it, got nailed by a can, went to fall, and instinctively went to grab for the porta potty and pulled the porta potty down with him, and somebody was in there.
Wow.
How'd you like to be just sitting there or standing there, taking care of your business, and all of a sudden...
And now you're going to live on YouTube forever.
Because I'm guessing when you're thrown off balance like that, so many bad things are going to happen. Because A, do you think you're the first person to use that porta potty?
No, and I know they put the blue liquid in there, but that doesn't offset anything.
And of course, you're obviously in the middle of doing something as well, and it's just not going to be pretty.
Nah.
Put it this way: you're probably going to need some type of hose down situation
for sure.
And the washing machine is going to get a workout.
I'm glad the Carolina Cup is encouraging more of a family-friendly environment. I look forward to it.
No, honestly, you can still have fun. People still have a good time, you know, and they just try to cut down the craziness that was there for years. But people were out there when I was there having a good time. You know, they were getting their drink on, enjoying themselves. But there's also families doing family stuff and kids doing kid stuff and people watching races. I mean, it's a mix of everything.
Right.
But yeah, at the Preakness I used to go to, they sold T-shirts. I went to the Preakness and never saw a horse.
Yeah.
That was a T-shirt.
You just hear that clumping every now and then. And like, what was that?
The 18-year-old version of me, the first time I went, I was 18. No, I didn't see a horse. Never saw a horse.
You probably never saw the track.
No. You know what? I saw the infield for like 12 hours. And they're, you know,
what's this circle thing?
What's that loud thundering noise? It's a thing. I'll just say that. It's a thing. 1 year at Pimlico for the Preakness, they decided to ban alcohol in the infield.
Oh, I'm sure that went over well.
4 people showed up in the infield at Pimlico. Like, wait a minute. No booze at the Preakness in the infield?
Well, all that says is no booze legally allowed in the infield.
Yes. There are ways around everything, my friend.
There's a lot of small receptacles that you can fit in shoes and pockets and all that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. All right, for Kari Swain, who we hope can make some big plays at defensive back at South Carolina through his career, is, you know, developing to be a defensive back. Here's Swain talking about his progress in the DB room.
When I first got here in the summer, I would say it was kind of hard for me to like adapt from being like a full-time receiver to a full-time corner. But I mean, just trusting Coach Gray, and he was able to tell me how being a DB versus a receiver and how it's different, just teaching me the ways. So
again, it's about development. You got a guy that played full-time wide receiver or mostly wide receiver in high school, and now you're going to be a full-time defensive back. It's totally different. And a lot of people were asking about Vakari Swain last year, going, why isn't he playing? Well, now you just got why.
Yeah, there's a lot of, again, going back to the mechanics things, there's a lot of small nuances and mechanics that, yes, you can be a good enough athlete to switch positions, which is what he's doing essentially. But similar to Nick Harbor at wide receiver, there's a reason why he didn't go out there and become an all-world, all-American wide receiver in your number one, because it's not something that he's used to. He has to learn more of the specifics of the position and get more ingrained in it as time goes along. And Vakari Swain's the same situation. Again, a good athlete and somebody that could certainly factor into taking that second defensive back spot this upcoming fall, but it's just taking more time and development.
He's got to learn how to play the position. It's different. Now, some guys would say who do make that switch playing wide receiver help them at corner, but you still have to make a huge transition into, playing DB, the nuances, a lot of things about, moving your hips and about other techniques and how to play the ball and position and how to play different, because playing zone's different than playing man,
right?
And all these other things you got to do to transition from being a wide receiver. So Vakari Swain has loads of athleticism. There's talk that he's going to be in the mix to return kicks and punts, but he's a guy that's still learning the position of defensive back. Now, hopefully this year he can get more run and get some snaps and go out there and hopefully help the defense be productive. But, man, everybody learns on their own time, right? So that's the deal with Vakari Swain. Come back, see what's trending at 2 on the game. Whenever you want something done for you, you want it personalized to you, right? Not cookie cutter, not homogenized, not, okay, you got choice A, B, or C, that's it. But I don't want those. But that's what you get. You want a personalized experience, especially when you're spending your money. That's why if you want to do anything regarding your kitchen, your bathroom, lighting fixtures, appliances, whatever, you call the Nest, 803-978-2025. You set an appointment. You go to 1331 Gadsden Street in the Vista. You sit down with one of the experts at the Nest. These folks have over 70 years of experience. Use that experience. Sit down. Tell them what your needs are, your tastes, what you're looking for, your budget, what you can spend. I've been in there many times. No matter what your budget, your taste, your needs, the Nest can set you up. Again, call 803-978-2025, 1331 Gadsden Street in the Vista. It's the Nest, 70 years of experience, giving you a personalized experience. Halftime show. Terry Ford, Tyler Head here on the game as we kick off the 2 o'clock hour. Like always, what's trending at 2, sponsored by Gamecock Traditions and Traditions Fine Jewelry. All right, we're going to get to some more Gamecock defensive sound, focus on the defensive backfield a little bit more with Nick Amenwori coming up. The lessons that he learned from last season. Nick, it was a mixed bag for Nick last year. Right?
Sure.
Again, Nick Amenwori against the run, thumbs up. A guy who makes lots of tackles from his spot in the secondary at safety. But there were struggles in pass coverage, especially when Nick was asked to drop into that slot and cover like a nickel. Especially the Florida game, very rough go for Nick.
Well, that entire safety unit as a whole, when asked to drop down into covering that nickel spot, with the exception of Jelon Kilgore, who had his moments at times and kind of ended up being the guy towards the end of the season. But as you and I have talked about plenty, you didn't have like a cover corner type of guy that you could slide into that role, as opposed to what you had in seasons past. So yeah, a lot of learning for those guys that weren't used to being in coverage in that way, covering those guys coming out of the slot.
And really, none of those three were.
Yeah.
None of those guys were in high school, just like we're talking about Vakari Swain. None of those three guys were just exclusively playing corner.
Right.
So all of them had to, work on their coverage skills. And it was a tough road for all three. Again, hopefully a year of experience, a year of development. They get better, or South Carolina finds more of a cover-type DB who could slide in there. David Spalding's been playing all over the place in spring ball. Spalding just can't stay healthy.
Mm-hmm.
So he might be a guy that we'll talk about that could help out as well. So we'll get to Nick Amenwori here in a minute. One thing I want to hit real fast, though, and it's regarding college football. Charlie Baker, the NCAA president, was calling for a ban on college prop bets in states with legalized gambling. Some states have put a stop to the college prop bets. Ohio, Vermont, Maryland, and many others have removed these prop bets from their betting markets. Look, these are student athletes.
Yeah.
And
technically.
Well, ready? Yeah, technically. I'm trying to find a better way to describe it. But these are college kids. How's that sound? These are college kids playing sports. I get to get NIL money. I get that the world's changed. I understand everything.
Sure.
But you're still looking at roughly 18 to 22 to 24-year-olds who are playing college athletics. And really where this comes from is just some of the bad roads that the prop bets lead down for college players. We got the thing with, in the NBA with Jonte Porter, which has been... Nothing is surprising or stunning, but you just shake your head, right? It's like, really?
You shake your head at the fact that he thought he was going to get away with it.
Yes. And how much more? Look, no one's saying that Jonte Porter is going to be any kind of upper-level NBA player. But you know what? You can make a solid living by being a replacement level or end-of-the-bench guy in the NBA.
Yes.
Why, oh, why would you do this? Because you will never play in the NBA again.
Well, and that's the funny thing. It's like, you didn't think anybody was going to be dinged or alerted when they saw that your prop bets were the biggest on the night, right, and you're a nobody to most people.
Coming off some nights you come off the bench and play a few minutes.
Sure.
And all of a sudden people are dropping prop bets on you?
It's like, okay, well, if Steph Curry's prop bets or LeBron's prop bets are the top, that makes sense. But this bench guy, there's something going on here. It's
Smell
like,
that? Smell it?
Wait, what account placed these bets? JontePorter@gmail.com. Huh. Wonder who that belongs to.
I know. It's like, come on, dude, really? That's right up there with the whole Alabama baseball betting thing.
Yeah.
Look.
And again, Coach Bohannon was not making as much coaching Alabama baseball as Jonte Porter was in the NBA, but dude, you were set.
Yeah.
You had a good gig going, good baseball coach, and now you screwed yourself over for the rest of your career.
Yeah, you're done. And that's just, I just don't get, I don't understand the mindset. Jonte Porter could have hung out being a dude that's waving the towel on the bench for many years, making a nice living.
Every time the NBA trade deadline comes up, what happens? We see guys getting signed to ridiculously high deals, and you're like, I don't know who that guy is. Oh, he's a bench player for the Jazz? Okay, well, he's making $20 million this year to sit on the bench.
You can make even if you get the NBA minimum, it's a nice living.
I know. It's insane.
So the prop bet thing, and then when you have college players, and look, in life you have a small percentage of goobers in everything.
Yeah.
And people who threaten you, hey, I can't believe that over-under that you were going to, hit 3 threes. Man, you lost me money. You suck. I hate you. I hope you and your whole family die.
Right.
That's a dude with no life or has no life / is a gambling addict.
But there's a lot of them out there.
But there is a percentage of them. Now, does everybody that gamble act like that? No. But you have extreme in everything.
Yes.
So this is happening. We've heard countless stories of NBA players and coaches and NFL players, and I'm sure you can hit Major League Baseball and every other sport known to man where anybody can wager. If you don't hit the number you're supposed to in your prop bet, someone's going to go after you on social media and wish bad things happen to you and your family.
Yeah.
It's there in everything in life.
Yes.
It just is.
Yes.
And yes, I don't disagree with what Baker's saying. Take the prop bet off the table for college athletics. You can still prop bet your tail off with the pros. Go get them.
Sure.
Go get them. All right, let's get to Nick Amenwori now real quick as we do what's trending at 2 here on the Halftime Show with Terry Ford and Tyler Head, sponsored by Traditions Fine Jewelry and Gamecock Traditions. Let's get to Nick Amenwori, what he learned in 2023.
The biggest thing I learned is probably you never really get a grasp of the game until you actually play a lot. Because last year, coming into the season, that was my first spring. So this is my second spring now. I enrolled in summer my freshman year. So last year was my first spring, and I thought I had things down pat and stuff, but I really didn't. So never really think you have it, and just stay with an open mindset and keep trying to find new things you get better at, and never think you got things under control.
I get Nick saying that. I mean, his freshman year, again, playing safety, not asked to go cover the nickel. Mm-hmm. And after his Nick's freshman year, he said, I got to get better in coverage. He did say that, but had a good freshman year. Again, a tackling machine is what Nick Amenwori was. Last year, remember, got hurt early, first game of the year against North Carolina, trying to get back from injury for a period of time, then got healthy. Hey, we're going to put you in the slot, struggled there. So I get what Nick Amenwori is saying, because you had to feel pretty good after your freshman year, right? You figure, I got this thing figured out pretty good.
Absolutely, especially after getting thrust in the role, like you said so early on in the season, which, by the way, South Carolina needs to break the trend of having an experienced DB go down in the first game to where you're having to roll a true freshman out there, because Jelon Kilgore got put in the same situation against North Carolina when Amenwori got hurt in that game. Right. So, a lot of experience, a lot to learn from from a season ago. And again, you're going into your third year now. You've kind of seen and been around the block a few times and gotten your taste of what you're good at and what you're not good at and things you need to improve on. As you mentioned, he is very aware that he needs to continue to improve in his coverage, and that's probably one of the main objectives for him this spring and through the summer, is to get better in those areas for when the season rolls around.
All right, one other cut here. We'll stay in the defensive backfield. Judge Collier was, out of all the young corners, really was kind of next man up last year. Collier got in the fire a good amount in 2023, and Judge Collier now kind of discussing what makes him an effective corner.
Just my range and my length. I got very long arms, so being able to use that to my advantage. When I'm out there on the field, that's definitely an advantage that I have.
And Collier had his good moments and bad moments last year. Again, you're learning, you're developing, you're hoping the lessons of last year will lead Collier or any of these other guys, whether they got a lot of run or not, just, spending most of their time in practice getting better. You're hoping someone pops.
Yeah.
And they can step forward and be that corner across from O'Donnell Fortune. Yeah. There's a lot of opportunity there, Tyler.
There is a lot of opportunity, and I think you kind of group Judge Collier, Vakari Swain, Emory Floyd, guys like that, kind of into a similar group, because they all have been talked about kind of in the same way of what their athletic abilities and skills are. It just has not quite translated onto the field just yet. And you had a guy in Marcellus Dial on the other side that is potentially going to get drafted here in a month. So again, it's not like the guys you had playing those positions weren't good enough. You just didn't have these younger guys quite ready to step up into that role as of yet. And again, O'Donnell Fortune has one side locked down, and it's going to be an ongoing competition to see who that second guy is going to be.
All right, we're doing what's trending at 2 here on the Halftime Show in the Game, sponsored by Traditions Fine Jewelry and Gamecock Traditions. Let's spin to the NBA real quick. It happened again last night. It happens a lot.
Wait a minute. Do you want me to play the clip?
Please play the clip.
And Caro attacking again. And It's not bad defense, but it's a foul and a finish, and you just see the strength where you're not going to stop him.
The Suggs cross pass with him. It's kind of what the Warriors do with a ball screen. Now you get a tech here.
Draymond's going to get a tee after Wiggins got the foul. So if you got a field goal, the free throw, and a technical free throw, Draymond's got to be careful here.
Yeah.
You're already down Kuminga.
Well, Steph
You've got one tee early. Steve just took a timeout, and you want to get away from Ray Acosta so this doesn't grow.
You got multiple guys from the Warriors bench just coming over just to make sure Draymond doesn't go over the line here. Got to watch out. He's letting them hear it. The officials are kind of letting him speak and say his piece. They got another tag.
AZ's gone. He just got ejected. With 8:24 remaining in the first.
That's a huge blow.
Yep. Happened again. Draymond Green, for the 19th time in his career, was ejected in a regular season game. Second most in NBA history behind the godfather of ejections, Rasheed Wallace. And you saw Steph Curry. When Green gets ejected, the look on Curry's face is, seriously, again?
Like, come on, dude.
And the problem with this is, obviously, it affects the team on the court.
Sure.
Because the sad part of Draymond Green is the casual sports fan looks at him as a goof, an off-the-wall baby that throws temper tantrums, that can't control his emotions. But the truth of the matter is Draymond Green is a highly skilled, very important cog to a dynasty in Golden State.
Sure.
And is he what he used to be? No. My 17-year-old's funny. He's like, Dad, he's got great beard hair now. He's old.
Yeah.
And I go, at least he's got hair. And it's just the idea that Draymond Green isn't what he used to be, but he's still important to this basketball team for what he does. They run the offense through him.
Right.
You know, he's a good rebounder. He still can guard multiple positions on the court. You take him off the court, it really hurts this basketball team. And for some reason, this dude cannot get it out of his head, and he can't control his emotions. And I don't care if he admitted after the game on his podcast, it can't happen. Well, you've said that before. And it still happens.
Right.
And look, I've said this forever. These guys who have to play I got to have an edge, man. I got to be right on that line. No, you step over the line way too much. A lot of guys play with an edge that don't get ejected 19 times in their career in the regular season.
Right. And it's of vital importance as well because the Warriors are occupying the last spot in the Western Conference to be in the play-in tournament right now, in the NBA playoffs. They only have a one-game lead over the Rockets. So if this continues to be a problem, if one of your better players is not on the court, you're potentially costing your team a shot at being in the playoffs.
And the thing is, Golden State, their arc is over.
Yeah,
that championship a couple years ago was like the basketball gods going here.
Yeah, sure.
Here you go.
The height of the dynasty is come and went. They're still relevant, but not how they used to be.
They're hanging on to stay in the playoffs is what they're doing. Remember last year they got in at the bottom of the West, and then they got bounced. And it's probably going to go the same way this year. But the thing is, to even have a shot or an opportunity at anything, Draymond Green's got to be on the court.
Yes.
Again, Draymond Green, years and years ago, when Golden State blew that 3-1 lead to Cleveland in the NBA Finals, Cleveland's up. They're playing in Game 4, whooping the Cavs. For some reason, Steve Kerr left Draymond Green in the game. Green got attack, which kicked him out of the next game. Cleveland won that next game, gained momentum from that Game 5 win, and then won Game 6 and 7. Now, the good news is it led to Kevin Durant. But Draymond Green, again, go back that far, in the NBA Finals.
Yep.
Dude couldn't control himself. At some point, you've got to understand you can play with a chip and not hurt your team by going over the line and getting ejected. So
right.
That's what's trending at 2 here on the game, on the halftime show, sponsored again by Traditions Fine Jewelry and Gamecock Traditions. We're going to re-rack an interview that you did with a Bama insider for baseball.
Yeah, I talked to Will Miller from Bama Central a little bit earlier on this morning. Got a preview of tonight's series start against Alabama. We'll play that for you next.
You'll hear it coming up on the halftime show. Terry Ford and Tyler Head on the game.
Welcome back in. It is the halftime show. Tyler Head and Terry Ford along with you on this Thursday. Again, coming up tonight at 8 o'clock, you have Gamecock baseball as they take on Alabama. Pregame coverage is going to be starting right here at 7:45 on the game. Earlier on this morning, I had a conversation with Will Miller, who covers Alabama baseball for Bama Central, to get some insight into the Alabama baseball program. And I started off by asking him his assessment of new coach Rob Vaughn through 25 games this season.
Yeah, Tyler, appreciate you having me on. It's good to be here. I think Rob Vaughn has really made his mark on the culture of this program, and I know it's obviously still just March, but it's evident what he's done with the players. One example of something that he's brought in is the 3 pillars of toughness, ownership, and grit. And you'll hear that talked about on the broadcasts and things of that nature. And one of the players wears the number 3 to signify those, that being right fielder Evan Slight. That's one of the things he's brought in, but he's really changed the culture and the mindset around this program. These players have goals to do some things that this program hasn't done since the turn of the century, and he and the coaching staff are there to encourage them along and help feed into those goals. I also think in terms of the playing style, things are different too. Offensively, he has this. It's called the pack offense, and it's really just a team offense. They're going to have production up and down the lineup, pretty much 1 through 9. This lineup's good at the top and at the bottom when it's healthy. Everything has been changed. There's definitely a different feel. I was on the beat part-time for 2 years before this, and things are definitely different now.
So you talk about that production in 1 through 9, and that all starts with Gage Miller at third base. This is a guy that was playing community college baseball a season ago. You know, you can get transfers and production from just about everywhere, but I have to ask, what was the expectation for Gage Miller coming in, and at what point did you realize, oh, this guy's really, really good?
I don't really know if the coaching staff is that surprised by it. I think that the expectation always was that he would hit for a lot of power, because in their scrimmages, exhibitions, and practices, the guy would launch the baseball. And they have a lot of guys in that dugout that are capable of that, just hitting the cover off the ball. Him obviously being one of them. Putting him at the top of the order is a decision that obviously conventional baseball wisdom maybe doesn't always suggest putting a preeminent power hitter straight at the top of the lineup, but it's working. The guy hits, and even when he's not hitting for power, he's really productive. For example, they played in Hattiesburg a couple of weeks ago or so, and he had 3 singles on the first pitch. The guy goes up there and he just attacks. And the first week or so of the season, he had to kind of find it a little bit. He was striking out some and timing some things up. But once he did that, the results have been immediate, and they've been consistent. I mean, he's hitting the ball at a really high clip. He's got a really good average, as well as the power numbers being some of the best on the team. I think off the top of my head that him and T.J. McCants are tied now at 11 home runs apiece, which is a lot. You know, I was going to mention this. The Alabama team in the past couple of years has been near the bottom of the SEC pack in terms of team home runs, and those numbers are up. And he's obviously the driving force behind that. His defense is pretty good at third base, and I think that this coaching staff really may have found something here. And like I said at the beginning of this, I don't think they're surprised. But, you know, this guy was, like you said, this guy was playing community college ball last year, and now he's one of the best players of the hot corner in the SEC right now.
And talking to Will Miller from Bama Central, getting some insight into the Alabama baseball program ahead of the series getting started tonight at 8 o'clock right here on the game. We'll switch gears over to pitching now. And when you look at the numbers for Alabama and pitching, most of those numbers kind of middle of the road in the SEC, kind of looking at the numbers for their starters over the past couple series against Tennessee and Georgia, a little bit up and down, especially this past weekend against Georgia where they did get swept. What's the level of concern for this pitching staff going up against a South Carolina offense that's been surging in these past couple of games?
The pitching staff has struggled to stay healthy. They lost Riley Quick after 3 innings this year. He started on Saturday of the opening weekend and then had to have Tommy John, and that was the first thing. And then Hagan Banks, who was going out first on Sundays for the last couple of weeks, had some apparent arm discomfort last weekend against Georgia. Haven't heard anything definitive about that, but obviously he's not going to go this weekend. So they have Zane Adams, who's been the midweek starter, and he's going to be slotted in to take the ball for this series. And the pitching staff hasn't necessarily been as sharp over the last couple of series. I think particularly in Ben Hess's case, he just struggles during the first inning. And after that, he kind of settles in. You saw that against Georgia. They had a doubleheader last Saturday, and he did that. Greg Ferrone has really stepped up. He's a lefty, the transfer from Louisville. And he's another guy the coaching staff is just raving about. You know, he began the year as a midweek starter, and he's kind of been pressed into this new role of, okay, he's going to be on the front line of the starters for this team right now, and he will go on Saturday. He has the potential to be an anchor that this pitching staff really needs because, like I said, they have been struggling with some command issues, but also some health issues, and those things are key to the season. If the health of the pitching staff is obviously of vital importance, and I think for the most part they are, but they have had some difficulties early on in the year that as a coaching staff you'd probably rather not deal with. Even so, for Zane Adams, and he's a young guy, he's a freshman, he's had a few starts. Like I mentioned, this is a big opportunity for him to really take a step forward against, like you said, a really good lineup.
Only one loss at home so far this season, that being to Tennessee in that Friday game. They ended up winning the last two to win that series in week number one. And we know from a South Carolina standpoint, it's obviously tough to go on the road to every SEC environment. What's the value of playing at home for this Alabama team?
I think it's definitely present. The crowds have really improved, and they've been there since the start of the year. I think people are bought in to the new direction of this program, like we talked about with Coach Vaughn at the top of the segment, and that's the main driving force behind that. But it has created an environment where when you get to these SEC baseball games that really come down to it, it creates a big fight feel in the venue. That Tennessee series, the atmospheres were incredible. That was the first series of league play and getting Tennessee at home. And those are two programs that it seems to me have really come to not like each other. And I won't get too long-winded about that, but in terms of whether that helps the crowd, I mean, I have to believe it does, considering how a lot of Alabama fans feel about Tennessee. But again, like I said, these SEC baseball series, they're going to have a certain atmosphere to them that the home team is going to benefit from. The team has kind of embraced the challenge this Alabama team has of playing away from home and not in front of all their fans, but it's certainly something you'd probably rather do. Even as a non-player myself, I can sit here and say that for certainty, I do think it's going to play a factor and it's going to help.
Last one for you here. Got about a minute. I'll switch gears, and I have to ask you a football question because we are now in the post-Saban era. What's the vibe around spring practice and the first run for Kalen DeBoer?
Yeah, different. I was not even 5 years, or I was around 5 years old when Saban got hired. So it's like a different world for me. Kalen DeBoer is a guy who I followed before he got hired here, and he's another guy that's made his mark on the program. But I think people are just excited to get going. Players, coaches, obviously everything is new look, and obviously it's uncharted territory for everybody. But I think they're rising to the challenge. It's definitely a good vibe, and maybe people are still trying to figure out the way forward. But they seem committed to attacking it first and foremost, and I guess that's a good mindset. If I were to evaluate it, obviously there's no way to truly know, though, until you hit the field that first time in August, September, and you actually have a season without him, and you see how these changes are going to be implemented in real time. But it's been a good start.
Again, appreciate Will Miller for giving us a little bit of his time earlier on this morning from Bama Central. First pitch coming up tonight between South Carolina and Alabama at 8 o'clock. Pregame coverage starting at 7:45 right here on The Game. It is March the 28th. I believe that is the greatest day in the history of the world. That's coming up on the Halftime Show with Terry Ford. I'm Tyler Head here on The Game.
Oh, it's time to get us caught up on the history of what's going on in the world of sports like we do every day. Sponsored by 1-800-GOT-JUNK. And you know what's funny?
What's that?
Tyler?
What's that?
Where I get my little sports history,
Uh-huh.
whole thing just crashed.
Oh, no.
Just give me a second.
Well,
We'll get it back. You got one?
While you were trying to figure that out, it did not occur on this day, but this is a day that people like to remind folks like me of an unfortunate moment in sports history. Today's date is 3/28, so people, of course, like to bring up Super Bowl 51. Happy 3/28 day.
Oh, lucky you.
Of course, the Falcons blew a 25-point lead, as I've seen far too many highlights from that game already today just scrolling through Twitter.
Again, run the ball.
Run the dang ball, man.
Run the ball, kick the field goal, game's over. Very simple, very easy. I'll never forget Kyle Shanahan's explanation in the post game. Well, in certain situations, according to what we do situationally, we all of our metrics scream past the ball. How about the idea that if you run the ball and you kick the field goal, the game's over?
Yeah,
how about that?
When Preston and I were talking to Patrick DeMarco leading up to the Super Bowl this past year, we asked him about what happened there, and he said he remembered trotting onto the field for, I think, what was supposed to be a 12 personnel play where he would be in, and they all kind of looked at him like, hey, what are you doing out here? He's like, are we not in 12? Like, no, we're in 11. Why are we in 11? And thus did not run the ball.
Exactly.
And, the rest is history.
Changed so many things. The perception of Matt Ryan, the career arc of Dan Quinn.
Matt Ryan would, without a doubt, be in the Hall of Fame conversation. Now people like, great numbers, but
Matt Ryan would be a Hall of Famer if the Falcons held on to that lead.
Absolutely.
If you look, the eye test, the stats, everything for Matt Ryan, except, again, does not have a Super Bowl ring. He was MVP that year. People forget he was the MVP of the league.
That Falcons offense was in the conversation with the greatest show on turf with the numbers they were putting up.
That's how good that offense was. And again, it wasn't Matt Ryan's fault they blew the lead.
It was not.
But Matt Ryan, people look at him different. Dan Quinn's coaching career gets looked at different. A lot of things. Tom Brady and the Patriots get looked at different.
Exactly.
Overtime was a different animal back then.
I wish they would have at least gotten one possession.
It's what you wanted. All right, greatest day in the history of the world. On this day, we'll hit a few of these. On this day, this was an iconic moment. 1992. I know where I was. 1992, Christian Laettner hits a 15-foot turnaround jumper at the buzzer to give Duke, the defending champions, a 104-103 victory over Kentucky and a fifth consecutive trip to the Final Four. An unbelievable moment. Unbelievable moment in the history of college basketball.
Is there a more famous moment in college basketball history? Like when I think college basketball, when I think NCAA tournament, that's exactly what I think of is that moment.
It was unbelievable. That shot, that game, by the way, was an unbelievable basketball game.
Yeah.
And Laettner hitting that, first of all, the pass from Grant Hill, it gets talked about.
Sure.
Not like obviously Laettner hitting that shot, but Grant Hill's baseball pass to get it to Laettner at that point on the court was unreal. There are Kentucky players on the court defensively that day who still have nightmares about not being able to defend that pass.
Sure.
And then Laettner hitting that shot. And another thing people forget is Kentucky went up 103-102. Sean Woods of Kentucky hit this unbelievable shot in the lane, and he banked it to give Kentucky the lead.
Right.
Nobody ever talks about that. Nobody talks about that miracle run by that Wildcat team. Rick Pitino's first true deep run as head coach of Kentucky with a team nobody thought could go that far.
Right.
All that goes away because Laettner hits that turnaround jumper from the free throw line as time expires. Well, unbelievable.
And that's what the crazy part about that is that wasn't even in the Final Four. That was just to go to the Final Four.
That was a regional championship.
Yeah, that was Elite Eight.
Yes. You're right. I'm trying to think while we're talking.
I'm watching the clip back now.
Just look at the pass.
Yeah.
The pass by Grant Hill is unbelievable.
That.
And you had Wildcats in the vicinity when Laettner catches it.
They were all over him.
Yeah.
It's almost like they were in shock that pass from Grant Hill was because he was basically standing on the foul line when he caught it, like in shock because the one dude's just standing there like not doing. One dude's got his arms up. The other dude's just kind of standing there like, I can't believe he actually caught that. I can't believe that pass was that good.
It was an unbelievable pass by Grant Hill. And, Duke goes their 5th straight Final Four, won their back-to-back championships. That play, though, and I'm trying to think of a play in my lifetime. The only other one I can think of is the Chris Jenkins game winner for Villanova over North Carolina. Because that was, again, the pass, the whole thing was just unbelievable. And people forget, I believe it was Marcus Page who hit the 3 for North Carolina to tie it. I believe it tied it with that shot. And then Villanova came down and Jenkins hits the, 30-footer to win it. That might be the only other one that comes close to that for dramatic last game shot in pressurized situation in college basketball in my lifetime I can think of off the top of my head.
Right.
That's just an unbelievable moment. And then, of course, the I Hate Christian Laettner documentary is pretty interesting, too.
That's right. Well, again, he's somebody that hung around college basketball for multiple years. So if you're a Duke fan, you love the guy. If you were just about anybody else, you hated him.
Yep. By the way, on this day in 1995, Michael Jordan, playing in his 5th game in 22 months, drops the double nickel in the Garden against the Knicks. Bulls won 113-111. Jordan, I believe, wearing number 45 when he hit the double nickel.
That's right, the second time around.
And just to add more insult to your injuries, on this day in 2012, the NFL's new rule for postseason overtime is expanded to cover the regular season by a 30-2 vote by the NFL owners. All games that go into overtime cannot end on a field goal on the first possession.
Which, that was a step in the right direction because for the longest time, whoever won the coin toss, they just kind of tried to get themselves between the 30 and 35-yard line, kick a field goal, and game over. Like, I'm glad you at least forced teams to score a touchdown to make it sudden death. But then we got to the point like, well, maybe that other team should touch the ball too. That'd probably be a good idea.
You know what? And the people who always say this, I think it's unfair. Both teams should have the ball in overtime. You fight and claw and scratch to get to overtime.
Yep. Both
teams need to possess the football. People always like to push back when I say this. Someone will look at me and go, well, they just got to stop them.
Right.
That's it. That's it here. That's the comeback answer to, I think it's fair for both teams to have the ball. I just think I never liked it that you could go kick a field goal and win the game without the other team possessing the rock.
Especially if you get put in a position where, let's say, Team A makes a long drive at the end of the game and has a tying field goal at the end of regulation. They flip a coin and win it and go on offense to start overtime. Well, guess what? The defense is just out on the field for 12 plays, and they're going right back out there. Of course, they're going to be gassed and have trouble stopping the other team. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't evenly weigh out.
All right, finally, 2015, and we do this because this is the last time John Calipari's basketball team was relevant. Kentucky beats Notre Dame 68-66, another really good game in the regional final. Headed off to the Final Four 38-0, and then they ran into Wisconsin.
Yes.
And it was done, and Kentucky hasn't sniffed the Final Four since, if my memory serves me.
Well, Cal gets another shot at it next year at least.
Yeah, we haven't gotten into that.
Yeah.
That Mitch Barnhart, the AD of Kentucky, came out and said John Calipari's back.
Like, well, read between the lines. We only scrounged up $20 million of $33 million,
yeah,
so you get another chance.
That GoFundMe page a little short. All right, so that happened in 2015. Greatest day in the history of the world today, March 28th. Always sponsored by 1-800-GOT-JUNK. We'll come back. 803-404-6100. We'll hit the text of the hour. And I might throw in a little more Gamecock sound, possibly get to our buddy Gage before we get out of here. We'll see. It's a halftime show. Terry Ford, Tyler Head on the game. All right, our text of the hour at 803-446-100. What do you got there, Tellerhead?
Yeah, so we were talking about linebackers earlier, playing some sound from Debo Williams, and we actually get this question quite a lot. Jason weighs in and says, what about Mo Kaba? I feel like it's one of those things we got to wait and see what happens, because obviously he's returning from his 18th different knee injury, and it was unfortunate you lost him so early on last season once again, and you hope he can be a contributor on this team, but it's one of those things until we really get to the season and see what he can actually do, it's kind of hard to count him into that linebacker room right now.
Right, and you have a lot of depth there to cover it if Mo Kaba can come back. It's a shame. Mo Kaba is such a good guy. We've had him in here multiple times here in the studios doing stuff for us, and just a nice guy, good dude, and it's just a shame that he's just, again, some guys, Tyler, the injury gods hate them.
Yeah.
They just do. And Mo Kaba, unfortunately, has been that guy. And hopefully, Mo Kaba can rehab, be ready in the summer, and then work hard, maybe, again, get some run, in the rotation at linebacker, play some special teams.
Right.
It's a stacked room, make no mistake. A stacked room. So we appreciate the text, 803-404-6100. We got to get to Gage.
Okay.
We've been wanting to hear from Gage Larvadain, look at me, for 2 days now. Now, we've been reading some stuff that Gage has popped a bit in practice, making some plays at wide receiver. Here is Gage talking about the lack of size from the receivers in the wide receiver room, something everyone's talking about. So Gage Larvadain talking about the lack of size. We're talking about size, physical size of the wide receivers.
We've all heard of the old little cliche. It's not about the size of the dog in the fight. It's about the size of the fighting dog. So, like I said, we don't really worry about it too much. Like, I've been small my whole life. Cut the tape on. You know what I mean? The guys in our room been small their whole lives. Cut the tape on. You know what I mean? So, it's kind of like I said. It's one of those things that we kind of use as a little extra motivation for sure. Having that chip on our shoulder. But as far as like NFL guys, yeah. I mean, you always want to watch like guys that kind of seem like Nick Harbor wouldn't watch Tyreek Hill, even though he's that fast. He's way bigger than him. You know what I mean? So. It's kind of, you always kind of want to model your game and look at those guys who you kind of see, like, I'm not saying I'm Tyreek Hill, but, little similarities in their game, you know what I mean? So.
I mean, Larvadain's like, look, we're all the size we are.
Sure.
We all bring skill set to the table. No, we're all not built like DK Metcalf or Nick Harbor, but, we've always been the size and we make plays, so we'll continue to make plays even though we're not the biggest dudes in the world.
Well, and we've talked about Larvadain's one of those guys that has moved around quite a bit. When he was at Miami of Ohio, not just specifically in the slot, he's lined up out wide. He can do a number of different things. To see somebody that's going to be able to go down the field and contest like high point balls, maybe not because of his size, but he can do a variety of other things where you can move around this offense. And that's kind of the thing too, is Dow Loggins is an offensive coordinator who we all agree is a pretty good mind when it comes to that kind of stuff. Has the spring and the summer to play around with these guys and figure out what kind of combinations he can use and what kind of things he can scheme up to take advantage of these guys if they're not able to go out there and get maybe, say, a taller wide out in the transfer portal or something like that, or if Nick Harbor's development isn't as far along as they want him to, because, again, he's not doing as much in the spring because he's splitting time with track.
All right, we'll switch at baseball. Opening day today in Major League Baseball. We talked about it in the opening hour. Braves are not contributing to opening day. They'll do it tomorrow because of the weather.
Should have been in Atlanta.
And instead, you're on the road and see what you get at East Coast weather. Brian Snitker, obviously the manager in Atlanta, talking about a variety of different things. Let's focus on the Braves bullpen. It's something that some folks have been talking about in the offseason.
I like it. I like it a lot. We have Joe Jimenez came in. They threw the ball extremely well at the end of last year, and he had a back problem that kind of stalled him a little bit. But you got him. We added Pierce Johnson at the trade deadline. Came in, did a great job. We have AJ Minter back. I love all. Bummer came from the White Sox. I mean, Dylan Lee is healthy again, and so I love our options that we have in the bullpen, and I think we got very capable guys of getting the ball to Iggy.
And look, bullpens, it's so interesting. First of all, if you look at trends in baseball, bullpen effectiveness can 180 year to year.
Sure.
You might have a great bullpen one year and go, well, I'll tell you one thing, we got all these guys coming back into pen. They were fantastic last year. We don't have to worry about the bullpen. And what happens? It's a disaster.
Yes.
And a lot of times, nameless, faceless guys shake out to be high leverage stoppers through a season. You're like, who the hell's that? That's just the nature of a bullpen. You might not know, Jesse Chavez from, Jesse James, whatever.
Right.
But bullpens are just so strange, very eclectic.
Well,
I mean, you just never know.
Well, and think about it. When the Braves won the World Series a couple years ago, the night shift, their bullpen was amazing. And you had guys coming in being able to shut the game down those last couple of innings. In the past couple of years, when they've gotten into the playoffs specifically, it hasn't been as good. You feel like you got a solid lineup of starting pitchers with guys like Strider and, Fried, and they're bringing Chris Sale from, the Red Sox this year. So you feel good on the front end. It's just, can those guys lock things down in the back end of your rotation?
Like, I'll give you an example. Because he brought up Aaron Bummer, right?
Yeah.
Aaron, last year in Chicago, 61 appearances, 6.79 ERA, 1.53 WHIP. You're like, ugh. Year before that, 2.36 ERA. Year before that, 3.51. Year before that, 0.96. Year before that, 2.13. Again, bullpen performances fluctuate.
Right.
So, the Braves, typically, everything works out. All right. Tyler, nice job, my friend. We'll come back and do it tomorrow at Quaker Steak and Lube on I-77 and Bluff Road. Postgame show with Elijah and Jay coming up next here on The Game. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Nice job, Tyler. (803-875-MENS) is the number of the Men's Clinic of South Carolina. You're getting older. Things just aren't what they used to be. And let's face it. We talk about how it could worry or concern you. Maybe it just frustrates you, makes you mad. I'm sick of not being anything like I was. I'm sick of not sleeping the way I used to. I'm sick of forgetting stuff that I never would forget before. I'm sick of having lack of life drive, lack of professional drive, lack of sex drive,